Hey, welcome to Being the Light. Happy to have you back and happy to be spending some time with you. We've got a really great guest this evening, a longtime friend, compadre, cohort in crime, and fellow seeker on the path, Raffael Kemenczy. We're going to be talking about symbols and languages and music and all kinds of crazy stuff. Speaking of crazy stuff, it is just, I don't know how your week has been going, but it has been over the top. It seems like every day somebody's calling with a mega tragedy. And a friend of mine was sitting at a traffic light. Somebody pulled up next to her and shot her with a pellet gun, man. It's like, what in the world in a small town? Hey, Linda, good to see you, man. Yeah, so we're not going to be playing John Jay's little piece of music tonight. We'll be playing that Monday on the Angels show. But thank you so much for sending it, and I love it very much, man. I'm glad you could make it. Also, I scoped out that link on the crystal bowls, man, and I won an 18-inch one. It's about $400. So I got that on Santa's wish list right now. I would love to have that. I had a big 20-inch F that just, like, when it broke, I had like a massive funeral, and it's like a member of the family died. Big heart chakra bowl. It's amazing. So we're going to be doing a couple of really fun events and adventures. A good friend of mine, Ilana Luna, is a pretty badass fire dancer, and we've been talking about collaborating for a while, and we're going to do a little event, a little pop-up event at a cool little place here in Sebring, and she's going to be doing some fire dance stuff to begin with. I'm going to do a light painting demonstration and show people how to do it, make some cool stuff, put some wings and things on people and invite them to play as well. And then the last little section of it, we're going to do a combo light painting with fire thing. So just super, super stoked about that. And it looks like the Death Valley light painting adventure might be back on the list too. I called out to, we were going to do a 3-day light painting adventure. I had my friend Jan and another really world-class light painter. We were going out to Death Valley for 3 days, and each one of us would do a different demonstration on each night, and it was really cool. We had a bunch of people signed up already, and then what a hurricane off the coast of California that blew into California, turned into a tropical depression, and just sat over Death Valley and just like flooded it. I got this call from my friend Jilly one morning. She was helping me get it planned. She goes, "You've seen the news?" I said, "No." And I turned it on, and every single road in Death Valley gone. Like the whole valley just became a torrential like flood, and everything was ruined. So I called out there today, and apparently they've made some really good progress. The hotels are still intact and standing, and apparently a bunch of the roads have been put back together. So I think that's back on the list to go out to one of the most magical places in the world and shoot some crazy light painting stuff. So put that in the back of your hat, and let's see what happens. That would probably be happening around the spring equinox at the end of March. Um, and that just happens to be the full moon next year. So awesome. So I met our guest Raphael about God, now going on a dozen or so years ago now, and we originally met through my tarot deck, and he had seen that on a site called Eclectic Tarot, which is still around, but at the time it was kind of like the place to go look at what decks were out there and what new decks were being seen, and I was totally blown away to get accepted. The editor um, ran a little feature on it in the new decks section, and I met a whole bunch of people. That's really how it kind of took off and started getting out to people's hands. Anyway, Raphael saw that, and he got one of those decks, and I was involved in, like, that was the first edition I had done of it, and I was in the middle of getting the second edition like beefed up, and a lot of new stuff added to it, and he jumped into the fray with me, man, and I wouldn't have been able to get that done without his help, and it turned into a magical friendship that has spanned many years, and he and I. Wow, this is a while ago too. My first podcast venture things were with Raphael of a radio network called Okie Talk out of Vienna. And we did about 60, 70 shows called The Wizard of Oz. And a lot of those, the initial ones were radio shows, but I went back and listened to some of them. Some pretty good stuff in a few of those. So it's kind of crazy to have somebody with history like that we go back a long way. Raphael's also a really gnarly podcaster and does a show with his friend Andres that we're going to be talking about pretty soon. So thanks, gratitude for Raphael for staying up in the middle of the night and coming to hang with us. So without further ado, Raffaele Kemenczy.
Welcome, everyone.
What up, my brother?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
Are you awake?
Indeed.
Well, good to see you, man. You scared me there. I didn't know if you were showing up. Just like you cut it right to the last minute. I should know about you. We've done this long enough, but whoo, I was already with backup.
No, I usually stick to my schedule, so.
Yeah, that's true. You're a rarity, indeed. So, I'd love you and Andres' show is really cool, and you covered so many different ranges of topics. I'd love for you just to share what the show's about and what you guys are really deeply into.
Well, so I guess since you talked about the backstory, I'll keep it shorter here. But one of the long-running podcasts I'm doing with Jim Kincaid is Team Rabbit Hole. And we just started that, and pretty soon I realized, okay, I'm interested in all this history topic and Tartaria, whatever this means. And then you find different online channels, and one of the most interesting ones obviously was Andreas. He made some documentaries and stuff. So then we spoke a few times, and then I think whenever Jim took a break or something, Andreas just asked me if we want to do a regular show. So we just started doing that. He likes to cover, well, everything. So there's quite a bit of, let's say, news segments too, which could be left out or not, but still it's interesting always, to contextualize it from a different perspective, just like we did a little bit with our shows as well, just to have something to laugh at. But mainly it's about, I would say, history. It's about religion. Right now he's doing a lot into Mormonism, which is also interesting because it's one of these, strange, doesn't really fit neither here or there things, and just having, philosophical discussions. Recently, we even had a candidate for the US presidency, Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai, and he's an interesting fellow for sure. So anything and everything from technology, religion, history, with maybe a slant towards this idea that it looks like, let's say, that there is something going on that's hidden in history only 200 years ago, and trying to get some kind of an idea, of what that could be. And doing that, I also translated some of his documentaries, and yeah, I guess that's how it came about.
Yeah. So, tell us, some of the topics you guys are into. There's some pretty crazy, you guys go some pretty deep, as you said, the rabbit hole thing, man. You guys do really go down some deep, deep journeys. What stands out for you?
Well, so what I kind of latched on to, because so we did also with Team Rabbit Hole, of course, lots of interviews with, psychics, readers, all type of astrologers, all kinds of interesting people. And it's always interesting, to understand, how did someone get a grip on reality? What is their reality tunnel? What are the belief systems? What tools are they using? What works for them, right? So that's let's say, interesting thing in and of itself. And then my main focus now, also with the interview series I'm doing with David Ewing Jr., is just this alternative history research, and just see how much proof of what kind, can we find for rewritten history or fabricated figures in history. And the main idea here just being that it very much looks like the world could have been a lot more unified than it is now, and many of the divisions we know, and a lot of it is even very known, like nationalism, only rose in the last century, really, and even in all official textbooks, right? So we see there was a lot of artificial partitioning going on, and the question is now, how can we trace that back? What can we find there? And what's very interesting to me, because a lot points to the Quran as one interesting document, simply because it's one of the few things where there is an unbroken oral transmission. And then just understand, how
Say that again,
also
Raphael. An unbroken what tradition?
unbroken oral tradition,
Ah,
where you could really say there's someone who knows it by heart and teaches it someone else by heart. And as
right.
far as I understand, there's not really any other corpus that exists in this way. So it's interesting for many reasons. Also, here the translations have been changed. There's so many pitfalls when you investigate it, and it has often little to do with the modern day sects and variants of Islam. So that's the other thing to consider when looking at it. Um, how should I put it? Well, simply, again, this idea that the world was a lot more unified, and a lot of the nations and modern religions and their modern versions of it have just been created to obfuscate this idea, because if everyone knew and would be like, oh, let's say my great great grandmother and yours, anyhow, we're living together, same language, same religion, then it would give no reason, to fight anybody else, right? And it very much looks like this is based on the work of Anatoly Fomenko and Gleb Nosovsky, who were mathematicians. They are scientists at Russia's Moscow State University, but they funded this alternative chronology history themselves. This is what a lot of these ideas have the scientific base on. And what they just did is they applied mathematical formulas to all the official history we have, and they found certain patterns. And then they found about an 85% match between so many different stories, which are just transplanted towards different time periods and
Like what?
different.
Like, give me an example.
Um, I should know these by heart. Let me think. Um, that there is even different individuals. I would have to look it up now. But for example, I interviewed it with Didier Lacapelle. He shows a few examples where simply you have guys that have a very particular name, and supposedly they existed around the Roman times, let's say. And then exactly in 1600 in official timeline, you have a Renaissance guy from Italy who has exactly the same name, but just Romanized, and the stories are similar. Or I mean, I would actually bring up, because I don't know those by heart, I would bring up a different example. But just to finish this thread, the idea here simply being that they could show mathematically that a lot of it was copied, and that it just seems that the modern nations and religions, in their modern fractioned versions, have simply been backdated, to give everyone credence, and everyone can say, my religion is the oldest. No, my language is the best. It's the oldest. I have the best national heroes. No, I have them. When actually all of the stories are very similar oftentimes, and appear to obfuscate this common whatever it was. And the point just being that through nationalism and the division of religion and language, this is how you can even make someone believe, oh, you need to go to the desert to defend the homeland or something. You see what I'm saying? But the very best example here that I like, in terms of that something with the official timeline is strange, Not sure if I had brought this up before. Are you familiar with the guy called Joseph Justus Scaliger?
Yes.
Right, so he's one of those famed guys, and a lot of the modern chronology is basically based on his works. And what I just found strange, and I even found this myself, I think, just investigating this guy, because everyone said, oh, he has the mainstream timeline, and this is what Fomenko and Nosovsky were criticizing, let's say, or correcting. And I look at his Wikipedia page, and everyone can do this, Joseph Justus Scaliger, and he supposedly expanded the notion, of Roman Empire, Byzantine Empire, made all kinds of important revelations. And then guess what his father's name is? His father's name is Julius Caesar. And then I'm like, all right, I can understand you find out all of this and then you name your son or your grandson after this great figure you found in history. But this very much looks like, on a very stupid and basic level, like, oh, who's the greatest in all time? It's my dad, even if maybe even that story is fabricated to an extent. But it's just, how should I say? This is so supremely unlikely. I can't even say, yeah. So that's more like a superficial thing. But then people can go into this. Fomenko and Nosovsky wrote, I don't know, dozens of books by now, where they go through this with charts and, they show you the correlations and all of that. So, and maybe one interesting example, which you may know of, is with a recent one, Helena Petrovna Blavatsky. And then I haven't looked into this too deeply myself, but her story is kind of strange, let's say. And then,
yeah, she's strange indeed.
and then you look at Catherine the Great, and apparently they look very similar. And this is another idea that whatever really happened in history,
and that's the premise is they're the same person.
It's a possibility. I haven't looked into this one in particular.
And Catherine the Great were the same person.
Well, now we have to be exact. The idea here being that in this case they would just be placeholders, or just to make up a story, and you just put someone in a dress, you photograph them, you make up whatever stories you need for whatever your agenda is, right? Whatever really happened is a different question and story, but just this idea of how you can manufacture an historical figure, or even a present figure. I mean, look at your president. I mean, I don't even know what to say about it. Yeah.
Every single place you look at now, I mean, there's not a single piece of news. There's not anything that isn't Google like focused and trying to manipulate how you think. It's like, and they're all, it's all made up stories. Like, depending on which brand and place in the spectrum of political, point of view you are, there are outlets that are feeding all of those points of view, like it's kind of crazy, and it's all fake. And the whole, we've gotten into this a little bit before, but the whole AI thing that's happening right now, and the ability to make fake people, and you're having interactions with those, not it's a few months back now, but there was, the Instagram girls, right? The influencer girls. There was this one that just shot to the top, right? And she's on the highest rated one. And there were videos of her, there were pictures of her, there are interviews with her, and it was an AI construction. Nothing is real. Like, oh my God.
And maybe one thing too, that I think we maybe separately even we'll do a show about this or something. So what's very interesting to me here, and we're just now, let's say, coming through to this idea, even on the most recent presentation just released on my channel, it's official Freemasonic lore in this case, that Freemasonry apparently has a particular problem. They write it in their own books, even if those books also fabricated, but whatever, or whoever really wrote them. But Pike and Mackey, I'm sure you're aware, both are called Albert. I actually only knew Albert Pike. I didn't know Albert Mackey. Anyhow, they write they have a problem with Islam, and they don't like the Prophet Muhammad. And it's a little bit strange, let's say. And then it appears that in the Quran, actually those that are called supposedly Jews in the Quran, what they mean by that is actually the followers, they call it the religion of Uzair, or the son of God religion. So this whole idea of having, how should I say, God come to earth in a sense, like incarnate. And then the idea that whether it's Jesus, Krishna, Buddha, or other stories, they are all just the same templated stories. And maybe you've seen, this was 10, 15 years ago, the Zeitgeist movie. This was like the first movie that kind of broke the internet, where he was talking about the Federal Reserve, but in the first part mainly about religion, and just showing, look, why is it with Zarathustra? Why is it with this and Odin? Why do they all have the same pattern? So it looks like it's the same story, just with a different art style, right?
Right.
And in the Quran, apparently, they seem to kind of accuse those individuals of be like, oh, those are the individuals we don't agree with. And there seems to be a fundamental difference in worldview, whereas in a lot of the Kabbalistic lore or all of the modern religions which have this Son of God aspect, there is some sort of, and now how do I put this correctly? Let's just say there seems to be a differing understanding of God or source than the understanding conveyed in the Quran. And why I find this so interesting is that this could explain the subliminal animosity that is always there. And why do so many people not want to integrate into Western society? Why does the West even openly declare that they don't like them? Why do they have to go bomb all of those countries over there? So I find it very, very interesting. And maybe one,
I don't think there's any religion that is like the good guys.
I'm not, and to be specific,
Religion, man, every single one of them is full of dogma, crowd control, and financial gain. Every single one of them.
To be exact, what I'm speaking of here is just the Quran as an oral transmission. I'm not talking about anything particular that is done with it today. I'm not talking about all the modern versions, and I'm not talking about the fact that all the modern dictionaries for anyone today to interpret the Quran have been written by the same guys that invented all these other religions.
Exactly.
So there's a few steps to consider here. The main relevant, interesting idea is just it really seems, because millions swallowed this book, that we have a chant that survived, let's say, at least 200 years, whereas everything else, especially if we consider the Gutenberg printing press and then the modern linotype, which only started coming about in the 1900s, and then we look at all the old newspapers, and they seem to be made for print, but they're from 1830. Who printed it that exact and fast and so many, supposedly, in 1830, when the linotype only came around in 1900? So what I want to say is any written scripture is highly dubious. And here at least we have one song that strangely enough talks about history and all kinds of strange things that seems to be intact from whatever was there before all the documents were burned or whatever happened. Can you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So anyhow, so that's the interesting part of it. And yeah, I find it just interesting to figure this out, because again, one could say, why does it matter about the history, whatever, blah, blah, it's just whatever. If everyone would really see it that way, yes, because then, let's, learn from the past, live in the moment, and, do something now and for the future. However, it is important because still so much of conflict, wars, cultural tensions, it doesn't matter where, are always based upon this idea of history. To be like, even with the current conflict.
Based on energy instead of history, instead of like human constructs. As long as we're following after human constructs where there are people that have desire for power and control and financial gain, like it's never gonna be anything but a big muddy soup. But when you strip away the dogma from all of the religions, it doesn't really matter. Religions happened in the place that they were born, and there are a cultural context of where those thoughts and that there's nuts of spirituality in all of those. And then quickly they get covered with governing things. I mean, look at how long the Catholic Church was actually a political arm in government, So that became little about the actual spiritual growth and light. And that's pretty much where I've been going. I used to get really deeply into all of that stuff. And I realized that, when you strip away the dogma and you get down to energy and how energy functions and the laws of energy never change. The laws of energy never get rewritten by people and their desires to move points of view and to control huge crowds of people. Those laws of energy are about ways that things work that never change. They've always worked like that. They will always work like that. And when you can find, that's the unification to me, man. In that world, everybody's different, but we're all the same. We're all like connected in that field. And the things that come up, in social media. I've watched social media since before there was social media, and the world has always been fragmented, but that aspect of it has just really, like, there are like fragments of fragments of the fragments of fragments now, and there are so many little niches, everyone pulling in every single direction that could possibly be imagined, real and unreal and made up. And I really wish we could get back to a zone, or get to a zone where you realize that the actions you take have no choice but to reflect back in these ways. And if we could unify and be sending out waves of like creativity and abundance, and like that could happen to everybody all over the world. I know that's like, we're talking idealism now, but to me, that's where life gets good and supersedes all of those. I mean, dude, so many criminals, so many scammers, so many like involved in all of those pushes, and it's hard and it's getting harder and harder to discern any kernel of truth from what you're being told. It's like every day it gets more difficult. What do I, and there's nothing to hang your hat on that you could actually 100% go, okay, yeah, I really trust that. I believe that. But you can trust energy. So I'm sorry, I got off on a wave there, man. But I see what's happening with the Middle East. Everything's going on in the Middle East right now, and the way that's being fanned, to just cause chaos and destruction. And there's nothing really good coming out of that except people killing each other because of long held hatred.
Yes.
It's kind of a helpless feeling to be able to not really be able to change that.
Yeah, so of course also the idea of education in a sense is a long shot. However, this is exactly why the an accuracy or understanding of history is relevant, because if those all people on all sides there
True.
understood that they've been lied to several times along the way or sold out by their supposed leaders, which then every time the other group can blame on the other ones, none of them realize that they are being, in a sense, controlled by the same ruling class that don't care about the population. But
At
if
all.
if they understood more and understood few of these things which you can even prove, like for example, or show simply, even originally, just to bring one example, when this whole thing was founded, just look at which armies were around, and then you can tell that it's so impossible that there was any surprise thing happening or whatever, but that the governing power, in this case the British, French, however you call them, they made sure certain things happen to further certain agendas, and of course the people suffer and hate each other, but don't realize there is the man behind the curtain. Yeah.
So on the energy theme, a few months ago you brought up the Hebrew alphabet and cymatics, and that kind of really spurred a little bit of research for me. I'd love for you to share what we've heard about that, and where you found out about that.
Well, honestly, this was just some kind of a meme I found or something. I had heard about this before, about similar ideas regarding this, even regarding light and the shapes or something. I can't talk too much about it. All I want to mention is that the modern Hebrew alphabet was recently created by Eliza Ben Yehuda. This is very official on Wikipedia, so just to know. But anyhow, there is sounds, and this was actually based on some variant of an Arabic script or whatever they had. He was like copying over things. But anyhow, still there will be base sounds. I honestly don't know about the exact differences between Hebrew pronunciation, Arab pronunciations. I'm sure there will be overlaps. Yeah, and apparently the idea that some of those create these cymatics patterns. I mean, of course, you know cymatics. I don't have one of these devices myself to test it or prove it. But yeah, definitely would make sense if there is some kind of a language that makes sense, or someone ever devised it with some sense of purpose or thought about pronunciations, that you would of course do something like this if you can. So, but yeah.
Well, there's been some research in actually intoning the letters, and each one of those letters has a really specific uh, uh, arrangement, a diagram of the way it falls apart, and the English, that's also true with Sanskrit, and you know it. I've been kind of digging into some of the root languages that you know were around originally, and there seems to be kind of a similar theme in that they all kind of are creating cymatic patterns, where some of the derivative languages like English and French and you know those things, they don't have the same, they don't have the same oomph behind them. So that's an area. I don't know exactly what that means. I'm like in the middle of digging into that right now, and it's an area of great interest. I find it really interesting. Have you gotten into any sound healing at all on your journeys?
Well, not like myself, but I know sound healers. There's one you may even like to interview. I know about it. I participated in some things at some point for sure. Uh, Not like particularly diligently, but yes, I'm aware of it. Also the gongs and yeah, different types of music.
Yeah, we've been doing. I've been doing a class. A friend of mine does a Sunday morning yoga class, and about 6 months ago, I started taking my crystal bowls and my Tibetan bowls and stuff, and kind of doing waves, backing up uh, her yoga routine. So it's like she's moving energy through those people's body, and I'm sending out like charged waves with intent for healing and peace, and like it's really beautiful, and it's evolved into these crazy guided meditations now that are just really wonderful, and there are more journeys, and that's what's been really exciting, is that people after the classes have been coming out. Oh man, I went so far. This like I went to this crazy place, and so I'm super involved in doing that right now. I'm getting ready to bust open a Patreon page, and I'm going to do a bunch of sound bowl stuff, some guided meditations. I'm taking the Bart On book, dude. The book you take to the desert island for the rest of your life. I'm going to actually take this book chapter by chapter and add that, build a thing on the Patreon channel by that. Have you revisited this book very much?
Not recently.
Yeah, you might. You know, it's been a while, right? You might give it another run through. You've learned a lot since then, man. I've been through this like probably 6 times from beginning to end over the course of 15 years, 16 years. And every time I go back and read it again, after you get through it, you've learned so much, man. It's almost like a copy of The Fool's Journey, because you go through all those cards, you know, card by card by card, lesson by lesson by lesson. You get to the universe. Woohoo, I'm all done. And you're right back at the very first full card again, starting the new journey. And that's what this book is like for me, man. It's like it never get like, the more you know, the more you can know and understand. And it kind of seems like the endless onion for me. So, and I have to say, dude, the meditation techniques in this book, the best things I've ever encountered. And they, wow, are just so um, specific, and work really specific focus and discipline, I guess, for lack of a better word, to be able to be able to ultimately get to blank space where miracles happen. That first exercise, oh yeah, it's going to be really easy. Sit there for 5 minutes and watch yourself think. Man, I sat down, I got quiet, and I'm like, okay, think. It wasn't happening. It was not happening at all. And then the second one is in the midst of all of that and all of your thoughts, grabbing one thought and to the exclusion of all others, learn to follow that one thought. And then the last one is the getting to blank space. And it's really cool because he gives little mental exercises and physical exercises. And he gave this little hint in there: look for the spaces in between the words while you're thinking. And just keep grabbing onto those and grabbing onto those spaces. And the spaces get bigger and bigger and bigger. And finally, you're in that blank space zone. And that blank space zone is where you can go anywhere from there. And that's a place where miracles happen and bliss exists in abundance. Favorite place. So anyway, encourage you to review again, man. And how's the numerology going, man? You still doing that?
So just now that you're mentioning this about the symbols, one thing, and maybe this is a midterm thing, but what could become interesting, just because you mentioned blank space, is this whole question of deconditioning. So not only from beliefs, but also from symbolism. So
Absolutely.
whatever you can do in that regard, because if it is, and I'm not even saying symbolism is like this or like that, but if it is true, of course, a fish in the water doesn't recognize it's in the water, right? And if it is true that someone has filled in the water and added some strange colors or something, not even saying that it means it's completely bad or anything, but it may be very relevant to, yeah, learn how to, yeah, how should I say, be in a blank slate state, or how to be able to reinterpret everything, or how to be able to, make your own symbols, because it very much seems like a lot of the symbolism obviously has been put there, and it seems with even very much more intent than even I maybe would have been willing to believe. But at the same time, if you can set up a society, you will choose a stop sign, this and that and this and that, to make sure the ants keep running in the circle, right? So I like this idea of the blank space. Numerology, I haven't done recently too much. I can still calculate it. Um, yes. So I've kind of, how should I say, in terms of divination, I have deliberately not particularly engaged in that a lot recently. However, things have been flowing along, so I guess I'm okay.
I'm such a freak. It's like it's become part of, like, I take apart every word. It's just the way it rolls now. And I've been deeply into making music from those sequences, like the sequences I have at the top of the cards. And I've been doing that with the angel cards. And I did last night's angel, and some of the music, dude, is just absolutely beautiful. Hang on one second. Here, let me see if I can get this. Oh, wrong computer. So this is the name of the angel. So I'm kind of blown away, man. That's not rearranged. That's the exact letters and the order they're in. And it's such a simple system, man, that like every single thing has a musical sequence, which makes sense. The universe was created with numbers, letters, and sounds. And having that little musical presence has added to connecting with them as well. And I'm excited to see where that's going to go. I did the show opening. That was Be in the Light. And the Angel Channel, I did the same thing. So all of the music I've been writing lately has been coming from some word or concept. I did love, taking uh, we both have been big into sigils for a long time, talking about symbols. Symbols are a condensed graphic representation of an intent or concept. So doing sigils, one of the ways that we do them with the crossing out letters, and those letters that are left, that makes a musical sequence. So I've been combining that with all of my sigil work for a long, long time, and some of the constructs with different sigils and the sequences and melodies that they make put together, been pretty amazing, and some nice meditation stuff. I'll share a few of them with you soon.
Yeah, I like the sound, and also so the intro for this show is also derived from those.
Exactly. Yeah. The kind of flute sounding tune. That is exactly be in the light. Those letters.
All right, I see.
Yeah. So it's been pretty fun. So what's been the most shocking revelation that you have been made aware of over the last bit of time? Like something that you just didn't think was like it could be, and it turned out that it was. Michael Zinn, what's up?
That's a maybe a difficult question. Let me think. I'm thinking if there's something, let's say, out of order in terms of the research. It's basically what I had mentioned earlier, this whole idea that it could be that we have no verifiable documents that were not written with particular intent, except this one chant, which strangely enough is the last thing I would ever have looked at, which is the chant of the Quran. So maybe that's the thing.
Well,
And then of course, now the big question, like I mentioned, dictionaries, this and that and this and that. I'm talking with different people that are investigating this. So yeah, maybe that's one thing. And the other things, just because it's a cool thing and maybe more visual, on my channel there's a video called Star Fort Mapping, and I kind of was aware of this, but it's just really cool to look at. The star forts, these like bastion forts, which some are still remaining. And there is this guy who has mapped, I don't want to lie now, but it's thousands all around the world, and they are in the craziest places. And this also seems to relate to whatever type of past civilization there was, whoever put up all these star forts, right? And so many of them are destroyed, and you can really see the more industrialized the country is, like US or especially in Central Europe, they were all razed down. You only see the remnants. But where they don't have so much money, they still left them standing. So there seems to be some ongoing operation, not to make people too suspicious or something. And I guess that would be the main thing, and the idea that it's possible that what we would now call churches were maybe a bit less imposing before they were redesigned and upgraded, and because they all have these water containers below, that they actually could have been some sort of water treatment facility / even power plant, so something with water and heat. And that of course would also be very interesting, and would also be a remnant infrastructure that partially is still being used, but where also the true origin of it potentially has been completely obfuscated. So, and this then goes into the direction even of maybe not free energy, which is this idea of having, very efficient systems that maybe were too efficient for modern capitalism. So they made sure, to remove them and put their own power plants up and all of that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wouldn't you love to get into the confiscated documents of Tesla?
Well, there's quite a few, they would also say about the Vatican and all of that. By now, I'm not even so sure who really has what. Of course, I would love to see all of it. But also I'm aware that there is, even personally, not directly, but through one proxy, of different cases where people just invent things and so on, even in present day. And simply because whatever they are doing is too efficient, they're not going to publish that technology. So I don't even think we would need to recover anything secret. Yeah, you see my point maybe, but yeah, of course,
I,
would be
you
very
know, I,
interesting.
I
But
would have
yeah.
loved to have gone through those documents and just watched how his mind works. That would have been just absolutely amazing. Did you ever get into the 369 energy flow sequence?
Well, I've seen it so many times, but please let me know what you think about it, let's say, or how you interpret this idea.
Well, the way that it flows, it perfectly describes energy flow in the greater universe. And the more that um, that flow happens, the smoother everything runs, and that's kind of where creativity, energy for creativity, and the creation of things happens. And I've enjoyed Tesla's work on many topics. Very very interesting. You know, did you ever hear the story Tesla was visited by aliens? Yeah.
No, no.
Anybody that's brilliant though gets called an alien.
Yeah, that's the other thing, and there's legal and illegal alien, it's always a question of how you define what. There's more rabbit holes along that route for sure as well. Yeah. Hmm.
So what are you working on there in Vienna? How's the world there?
Well, I wouldn't say I'm particularly connected to the place where I'm at. Now this weekend I'll actually be at a festival in Austria, so that would be nice. Meeting some nice people. And aside from that, I'm mainly in hermit mode, just producing stuff, doing podcasts, and attempting to survive the absolute absurdity that is this reality. So, yes, and helping different people with marketing, with different things. I may even send you a few things. Even one thing in particular you may be interested in testing out for frequency healing. Let's not call it like that, or maybe you can. Well, frequency-based, these frequency-based devices, there's different types, right? Some of them are more popular than others. This is actually not, there is some that claim it's partially based on Tesla's work. Others say there's, George Lakhovsky, or
Yeah.
there is Dr. Royal Raymond Rife. This whole idea of adjusting frequencies to particular states and ailments potentially. And yeah,
I'm
so
totally into that. Yeah, in a big way. That's very real research, man.
So there's one friend I have who basically developed a device like that that's quite cheaper than the others. The small version even literally is just like, it's like this. It's just like this size, let's say, yeah, and it weighs nothing. You almost think like, oh, because it does cost a few €100, and you're like, oh, what is this? It's just a piece of plastic. But even I have a friend who, on an impulse, I was like, this looks interesting, and he got it, and he's, according to himself, 70% relief of like chronic back pain within a day of like hardcore usage. But still, and the cool thing about this one is that it's less expensive than others, and it's not locked in. So basically you have all kinds of frequencies, all kinds of programs. And recently I even heard this is maybe crossing the cymatics thing a little bit. If you put the right device next to it, you can hear what it does, right? And there was just one example I heard for parasite cleansing, and then you hear it like, and and you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
Because yeah, anyway, so that's super interesting stuff, because ultimately, whether we talk about energy work, whether we talk about peace, whether we talk about understanding what's going on, it all goes back to health. If we're not healthy, then we have no capacity to deal with any of it. But if we are, it's much harder to trick someone or get someone into dependency and all of that. So aside from the research things, I'm mainly focusing on health topics in terms of marketing and stuff I do otherwise.
Do you still have access to that gnarly Shungite?
Well, not in the sense that it was before. I mean, I have it here.
I mean, it's amazing stuff. And okay, anybody out there that doesn't know about this,
Right. You should give the example. I'm always citing you actually when I talk about this, but I've seen enough other researchers and people that have been verifying similar things. But just so you know, so you're part of the reason why this may be the most expensive thing I'm owning.
Well, the crazy thing about it is it's so effective, but it's still cheap, or relatively. Shungite blocks electromagnetic energy. And back when 5G was coming out, I had been doing research into the 4G network and its effect of that radiation on the human body. And there's tons of research, like a bunch of congressional presentations showing how uh, really deleterious that energy is. It causes all kinds of mental things, lack of drive, memory loss, testosterone lowering in men, and genetic aberrations and all kinds of stuff. And that was at 4G levels. 5G levels went way the hell up here. 5G was really developed as a military weapon. So we started doing some research on what we could use to block some of that stuff. And shungite is amazing. And if you carry it on your body, it will block a substantial amount of electromagnetic energy. A friend of mine has a techno walk, and he's got all the meters and everything. And we actually did a test on where I was with just me, and then with the shungite, and it was, up in the high 80s or low 90% of that energy blocked, and it makes a really big difference. And you wind up seeing people with weird growths and stuff when they're hanging in their pocket all the time. The other thing I would love to suggest is in your bedroom, like I paint the inside of my walls with electromagnetic blocking paint and then paint back over them. It's kind of fucked up because it doesn't allow you to do a lot of stuff on your phone in your bedroom, but your bedroom should be for sleeping. And other fun things that you don't need to be on the phone for. And the reason that being is while you're awake and powered up, your light field is projecting and sending out stuff. And just by that nature, it keeps a lot of gooky stuff from attaching to you. But when you're sleeping, you're in your most receptive state and you're open, and it's really easy for energies to be sent to you during that time in your cycle. So having at least your bedroom, we live in the soup of it. There's nowhere to go to be escaping from 5G energy. But you can, at least have one spot where you can go get rest and recuperation and regeneration of your body, at least for a few hours every day, which I've been really I would stand behind that. And it's not very expensive. I think it was like $150 for like a 5-gallon can of it, which not very much, and super worthwhile. So the shungite, you can get it on Amazon, super cheap. Get a nice.
I mean, even here, I would say just in the best case, you know someone who knows someone or whatever, because the online prices I saw, I'm not sure if I would consider that super cheap. But I guess the cool thing is
Maybe it's changed, yeah.
Yeah, I think, and just if you look for it, just look carefully, because I think some also really like to, put whatever price they imagine on it. Is the one thing. The other thing is to check for the difference between shungite and noble shungite.
Right.
What everyone can do is, what I also have, you can just get a small piece, and then you can make a necklace out of it. That's what I did, for example, or I have.
Right.
And that's, I mean, I feel great with it. I'd never measured it or something, but I heard it from enough individuals that it really seems, and even in relation to other research and other people with other lab tests, that this has some special properties. It's some absorption field or whatever, and maybe it's because of the carbon structure that this creates some kind of a field, because it seems, from what I heard, that it even, for lack of a better term, dissolves or something, even things in its surroundings. So even if there's certain toxins or something, like in a liquid, it seems, if I understood this correctly, that if shungite is close or submerged or something, that these things somehow vanish or whatever, and they do not accumulate within the stone itself. So it's very strange. But there's
That
a
is
few of
very
these.
strange. I have not heard that.
There's a few of these things. It reminds me of the paper I read, if it is correct, regarding monoatomic gold, which also only has 5/9 of its weight and seems to have this superposition thing, whereas then it simply cannot get damaged anymore. Because the way I explain it to myself, no idea if that's correct, but it seems there's certain high density, high energy configuration of material that creates some sort of a portal, or for lack of a better term, to the next layer up, and then somehow can send bad stuff there or generate order on this level, something like that. You can see what I'm saying, yeah?
Yeah, I have to
So,
look into that.
and anyhow, it's a super suspicious thing because supposedly it was like a meteor or something. That's what they say. And also, just what I know, I think the deposits are very localized. So it's not occurring everywhere, but only in very particular places, if I understand this correctly. And the only other thing I can say is that shungite, officially, supposedly, is nothing but noble shungite, but simply having more of the carbon structure already, I guess, oxygenated or something like this. And then it's like changing into it over time. Yes. But when you polish it, it still looks nice. So this is, it can't tell the difference. So it's good to know this is noble shungite or elite shungite. And
That's a nice chunk you got there, buddy.
Yeah, well, you know why. And this is
wow, that's a beast.
And this is regular shungite.
Is that a cube?
Yes, yes.
Nice.
But this is only regular. This is wrong. And also, I mean, it's of course subjective. So this is just anecdotal. I have one friend you spoke with, at least, Christian from Hungary. He's quite sensitive and psychic as well. And strangely for him, and he's also doing lots with crystals, when he was taking this one, he didn't like it at all, like the regular shungite. But any piece of elite shungite, there was like particular resonance. So yeah, anyone just try it out. You don't need a huge piece to test it out.
No, you really don't need a very big piece of it at all. It's a very, very small piece, little chunk of it would be very, very effective. That's what the one we tested out was like, just a little cube of it. Yeah, exactly. That's all you needed. Well, Mr. Kemenczy, we've made it through another one, my brother.
Thank you very much.
Oh man, thank you so much for spending time and for staying awake. And you're a mensch and a master, man. Thank you very much. I've enjoyed my trip down the path with you, my brother. It's been a really interesting and enlightening journey, man. I look forward to many more years.
Me as well. Thank you so much. And thanks everyone in chat and for joining and for listening and watching. Like and subscribe.
Yeah. See you later, man. Thanks.